everybody, to another edition of the Rock Pile Report podcast. I am your host, Bill's season ticket holder, Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And guys, I'll tell you what, earlier tonight we recorded a little bit about what it's like to be sitting behind these mics for 10 years. The intro that Chris dug up from our very first recording.
It was a test recording.
To now getting to rip the Band-Aid off this thing. And look at this, guys. Official Moosehead. Like, that's how you ring in a decade anniversary. You bring back the Moosehead. God, it's crazy thinking that we've been doing this for 10 years. 10 years of nonsense podcasts. I mean, one of the things we talked about, and I see Kyle the beer guy in the comments here. We talk about that, but we talked a lot about community and the things that we've built here over the course of a decade of doing nonsense podcasts. Chris, one of my favorite memories was post game after the Bills beat the Ravens in the divisional round during COVID, and me and Kyle spent like an hour just yammering at each other on FaceTime. Not even on real FaceTime, because we're both too cheap for iPhones. So we just have Facebook Messenger camera and we're yelling at each other on the phone. And my wife comes downstairs and goes, "Who are you yelling at?" I was like, "There's a guy. He's in Nevada. We're talking about that." She goes, "Don't even tell me. I'm going upstairs." And Kyle's on the other end going, "I'm smoking a cigar in the bathroom. I'm going to get in trouble for this." I go, "We're both in trouble, and it's the best time ever."
I want to get this out of the way. So I have a box over here that my wife, Jessica, gave me.
Oh, boy.
It starts with a card that says Rock Pile Report HR Department on it. So there's the cover. Two ducks walk into a bar. Clunk, clang, ow. And then on the inside, oh God, my wife wrote some stuff, and somehow managed to create the longest running Bills podcast known to mankind. Congrats on surviving 10 years of one another and managing to entertain thousands of people while doing it through endless rants and hot takes, colder than a bench warmer. You've managed to cultivate a community of Bills enthusiasts who keep coming back for more of Drew's rants and Chris's terrible jokes. Here's to a decade more of the bullshit in the basement and somehow convincing people to come back for more of Chris's awkward political wisecracks. Now, here's another thing. There's a box. Look at this. It's huge.
Okay.
So Jessica's gonna love this. This is like, for anyone out there that's been seeing somebody or you've been married a while and you just have stupid arguments. I know you and Larissa have stupid arguments.
Oh, for sure.
So this is one of mine and Jessica's arguments. So obviously we're connected we have an Amazon account. Packages come like every other day. So I will tell you right now, as a man, if I got an Amazon package, what I would do is I would take a knife. I don't want to give away my address here. I just realized that. I would cut down the middle with a knife, and I would open it up and pull out the contents within this box. And my wife does it differently, and it irritates me. So I'm going to open this box the way my wife opens up an Amazon package. Oh, wow. So where's Joe Miller when you need it?
Yes!
So
we have a copy for the studio.
We have this. Joe Miller. Cool book.
Joe Miller's
that was our
uncle.
When we did,
it was our original. That's actually how we brushed elbows with Joe Miller first. That was the original kind of just like Twitter logo, like Podbean logo for our podcast. And it turns out that book was written by Joe Miller's uncle. And it's through that I know him and his cousin, J.C. Gethiker. And It's crazy. Again, you think about the people you meet and the stuff you know. Chris, hold that book up again. His uncle, you want to throw the camera on yourself there for everybody, Rockin' the Rock Pile. Some of the stories that are in this book, like if you want to talk about a coffee table book, it's old school throwback Buffalo Bills players' stories and them just telling their lives and it's incredible. I love it.
There's also, not to mention, also the cover art that we used, I guess, unethically as our audio logo for the first couple years. But I know that you said, oh, come over to my house, I'll open it. We have some allocated bourbon here.
Oh, my God. E.H. Taylor.
I wonder if, you know what?
That is how you celebrate a decade, baby. Woo.
I told her that I went to Cordially Yours to buy that Rebel 10.
And she knew you wouldn't buy that for yourself.
Exactly. Because I'm like, I've seen this. I've never had this. And I've seen it, as much whiskey tube as I watch. You see this, people talk about it. Oh, we love it. We love it. We love it. And then it gets to the point where it's overhyped and then you just don't want to try it.
I do like how Spin had to check you. Don't put your address on the internet, Chris. Guys, feel free to send him dog poop. If you tell me that's what you're doing, I'll just give it to you. Just DM us at Rockpile Report.
Yeah. So now we got some E.H. Taylor small batch bottled in bond to try.
So one of the things I was thinking about being this is our 10-year anniversary. We just recorded a whole show about it. I might have gotten misty-eyed. I'll say this. I love you guys. Those of you, show the address again. We're coming over. Yes. So for those of you who show up for this nonsense every single week, I love you guys. And I also, I think about how long we've been doing this. We've had time for a lot of really terrible opinions and a lot of really failed bits. I want to hear from you guys. What was the best and worst of our failures as podcasters? See, I like focusing on the negative. Why the positive? One of the things I talked about, and I didn't get a chance to really expand on during our last show, was the idea of right now there's too many people who want to be seen in a positive light. Everybody loves themselves to a degree where they believe that the effort they put into this thing, well, it should yield success. I should be successful because I work hard at this thing. First of all, success is this weird, ambiguous thing that it means something different to everybody. It depends on what you need out of a situation. Also, that's not how any of this works. You're just doing a thing. You're along for a ride. And if you, what I've learned over 10 years of podcasting is it's not about making people like you. It's not about getting listeners or viewers. It's about getting in as you get in where you fit in. And you find people who get your vibe. Find people who understand you, and they'll stand by you, and they'll show up, and they'll show out for you, and they will come to tailgates, and they'll drink with you, and they'll show up to your YouTube show and call you a fat idiot, and that's okay. I love that because they're here, and that is what I love. That's what I love about this art form. It's what I love about this medium. It's that if you are you and you truly put yourself out there, other people who are like you will gravitate towards it. And once you capture that, then those people, you're locked into something together now. And this will never get old for me. Not ever. So while Chris warms up his glass of E.H. Taylor over there to his liking, what I'm going to say is I want to thank everybody who's stopped by over the course of a decade, whether it's to tell us we suck, whether it's to tell us we're great. The people who meet me in public, don't worry, it never gets old. My ego is gigantic. It's I got stopped at Buffalo Trace a couple weeks ago. Some guy was like, "You look familiar." Yeah, you're the guy who drinks and yells on the internet. I go, "Yep."
To Greg Thompson.
Oh my
Sabres
God.
Game.
It was me and Greg Thompson sitting next to each other, and the guy in front of us turned around and said, "Hey, I recognize your voice." And you saw Greg's face. He wanted to shake that guy's hand because he thought he was talking to him, and instead he was talking to me. And it was right there. You find your people. Everything else figures itself out. You don't overthink it. And also just be you, be authentic. For anybody out there who thinks about starting content or whoever wants to be a part of this, be yourself. It'll figure itself out, you know? And so with that, I love that I get these throwback moose heads. Chris was nice enough to go out and get me a 12-pack of them.
Yeah, you guys can't see it, but like right off the camera is
I have the box.
Is the box.
Guys, it's a hell of a thing to be doing this for a decade, and I love I just love that I've gotten to do this. I love that I get to do this with one of my best friends. I love that I get to show up here every night, drink a bunch of beers, talk about football, or at least anything. Talk about anything you're passionate about. As long as you love what you're doing, it's like, what do they say? Love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
I never feel like I'm working here. I love this, and I love you guys for showing up. Chris, cheers.
Cheers.
To a decade.
10 years.
And to all of you guys in the chat, all of you watching live, all of you listening at home right now on audio, I'll do another one for you. God, that's good. All right. So with that, let's get into some Bills talk. We're about 10 minutes in here. We've bored these people to death. Bills training camp dates have been announced. And I'll tell you what, I don't hate it. You know, when you look at the schedule, it starts July 23rd, end of July, rolls straight on through until August 7th. And what I think is funny is when you look at the ones that are, like, first of all, Chris, I feel like there used to be more training camp practices, don't you?
Probably.
Like July 23rd to August 2nd, that doesn't seem like a lot of time. Am I crazy?
It's
or
like 10 days.
Did I get old? Or is this, did they truncate this?
Yeah, did you become Fred Smirless?
Yeah, I somehow became old. Is it me I'm Skinner? Is it me who's out of touch? No, it's the children who are the problem. I don't understand. Like, guys, did Bill's training camp used to be longer? I feel like it had to be. Chris, give it a Google and see 2020 Buffalo Bills training camp schedule. It lays out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then it's over. It's crazy that it goes from the 23rd to the 7th, and it's just done.
There's last year.
24th to the 8th. I guess it's me who's crazy. And again, all of them are open to the public except for one. Now, what do you think it is that the Buffalo Bills have one closed to the public practice every year?
I don't get it. I don't know what.
What's the value of one
I don't know what the value is.
Closed to the public practice? I guess I wonder, what is it that, like, is that the day where they do all the real stuff? Is that the day where they pull down the curtains and they go, okay, none of these rubes are here. Let's really get into what the offense and defense are supposed to look like. Is that the game? I'm not going to lie. It could be. It could very well be that's why they have exactly one practice. It's towards the end, Chris. So you'd assume that a lot of the installs already been done. Like, notice they did the same thing in 2024. When you compare the two schedules, every year they have one practice that's not open to the public right near the tail end of training camp. I guarantee you that's the day where they're breaking down what they want their game day offense and defense to look like. And then the rest of it that's open to the public is basically, okay, here's 2 more days for some rookies to go out there and try. Go out there and try. Now you've seen what we think of you if a game day situation were to roll around and where we think you're slotted. Now you've got 2 days to change your mind before the preseason.
I'd also like to point out that when they list for this season that there's a practice that's closed to the public, that also means Chris Brown.
Yeah. It took a second for that to sink in. I remember Chris Brown now. He'll go down in history as the first media member to ever get kicked out by the team. And he works for them. They're cutthroat. You can't screw around out there at Bill's training camp. It's like the CCP runs that thing. I'm looking at these comments. Spin, you're hilarious. He goes, if you show me your address, I'll make it my daily mission to mail you 2 to 3 letters a day. It can become a tradition. A goal to force Chris to have to go to the post office to get mail because it won't all fit in his mailbox. I love it, Chris. You're going to get antagonized by our listeners.
I love it.
I just, the FCC doesn't seem to have any bearing on this show. The FCC has no bearing on anything I do, just like the IRS doesn't. Just like, guys, what I love is that life's full of choices, right? You can choose to care about things or not care about them. It's all actions. A wise man once told me that life is nothing but choices and consequences. And if you're okay with the consequences, you can do whatever you want. You could choose not to pay your taxes. It's a choice. There are consequences. I can choose to drink beers behind a microphone and say whatever the hell I want. And whoever cares about it can approach me about that in any way they see fit. And I can choose whether I care about that or not. That's what I love about life. It's all about choice. And
Ralph Wilson wants to know if ice has any bearing on your life.
I don't need a green card, senor. But what I will tell you is that is funny in the sense that, again, government agents, who knows, they might get confused. They might get confused like they did with that other guy, and I'll end up in Guantanamo. They'll be like, well, he was on this podcast saying some disparaging things, and also we don't know. We don't know. So when it comes to Bills training camp, it is very hard for the lay fan to get tickets. I know this. I understand that it's difficult because they put it up for this year. They're doing an auction. They're not even doing it the way that they used to do it. Most fans, and I don't know if you guys have read the press release or those of you listening or watching now after the fact, but essentially season ticket holders will on the 24th get an opportunity to sign up for tickets. And then from what I've read here, they're going to open up a lottery system. Okay, here, due to the limited capacity at St. John Fisher, there will be a training camp public practice lottery. Fans can request a maximum of 4 tickets. Entering the lottery does not guarantee you tickets to general public practices. Ticket availability is limited. The lottery will close on June 26th. You will be notified whether you won tickets or not, which will start on the 30th. So the Bills are essentially telling people, look, this queuing system that we used to use to get people to training camp, it's not working. We're tired of fielding emails and phone calls of people complaining that they didn't get in. So now we're going to let all of you get in, and then we're going to vet you to see who's on the list of people who shouldn't be here. And then we're just going to pick randomly until we run out of tickets. I feel like that kind of sucks. I feel like that methodology takes some of the, I don't know, like Christopher, that commoditized my culture. This is a far cry from free ticket pickup at JCPenney. You have no idea. Christopher, you just hit on a dynamic I've told people about for weeks. I still remember going to JCPenney to buy concert tickets. I'm old enough that I can remember going to the what do you call it, Chris? Not the public service desk, the customer service desk, to go get tickets for concerts at JCPenney's desk, because that's where you went. They had a Ticketmaster thing, and they'd go into their little DOS-based computer, and they would say, okay, there's X number of tickets. How many do you want? They'd run your credit card, or they'd take your cash, and then they'd give you tickets. And you had physical tickets, Chris, printed on like the actual Ticketmaster ticket. They would print it for you right there, and you just had it. And you walk out of
You don't think I would like it?
This is it.
I got to go to Bison's games to fill these and go to the ticket office so I can fill that out.
You do know you can go to the Bills and ask them to print you a paper ticket for $5.
I've had enough to drink by then, and I forget.
So, guys, I guess the point is I'm making here is it's going to be difficult. Know that. Know that and understand that. And also, I'm going to do what I can, because that's kind of the, isn't Drew Harambe's child? Here's what I want to do tonight. Tonight, I don't care about training camp. So, to 3 different people, season ticket holders can claim 6 tickets. For 3 different people, we're going to give away 3 pairs of training camp tickets. Because right now, the current system gives you 0 control. Like before, you could wait in a queue, and then if you were lucky enough to get into the queue early, you could pick your day, and you could build a schedule around that. Now you're stuck waiting for some nameless, faceless, minimum wage earning member of the team staff. Not even minimum wage. They're probably interns. They're all interns. Let's not kid ourselves. to pick your name out of a hat and then tell you what day you can have for training camp. I don't like that. I think that this whole thing has become a dog and pony show that it didn't need to be. So in that way, tonight during the live stream, we are going to give away 3 different pairs of training camp tickets. I will go on. I will get them. We will have to communicate and collect your contact information. You'll have to DM us or email us, rockpilreport716@gmail.com, at Twitter, at rockpilreport. Essentially, we're going to give 3 pairs of tickets away, and the only criteria I could come up with, because it was something that Mario Granata from #Sports said this morning that really got me thinking about this.
About his hairline?
No, that thing's smoked. His hairline, he looks like what happens when John Wick turns 60. Like that long hair, but he almost looks like the butler from Scary Movie. As soon as his hair turns gray, he's got to cut that off. But Mario Granata from #Sports put a thing in our group chat this morning about the drought and asked a question: who was the third leading receiver behind Eric Moulds and Peerless Price in 2002? And we got to talking about it, and the answer is Josh Reed. It's a forgotten name amongst Bills fans. Do you want to know why, Chris? Do you know why Josh Reed is a forgotten name amongst Bills fans?
I will tell you, and this is Josh Reed, the football player, not Josh Reed from WIVB.
Yes.
Josh Reed, football player, has always stood out to me because while he was in college, so was my brother at Auburn. Josh Reed went to LSU. That's when I paid the most attention to college football, and I was a fan of Josh Reed at LSU. And I was like one of those people like, oh, we got Josh Reed. This guy's going to be somebody. And then he was average to below average.
Roy Collins goes, do you plan on winning the training camp tickets to give them away? Yes, that's my goal, Roy. I will be there early on the season ticket holder giveaway just so I can give them away to you guys, because honestly, I don't care about going anymore. I take my kids to the blue and red scrimmage. That's enough for me. So the criteria for tonight's contest during the show is going to be, throughout the night, I want to hear who was the player during the drought who annoyed you the most and why. Mine is Josh Reed, because Josh Reed won the friggin' Biletnikoff. He won the Biletnikoff and then made it to the NFL and forgot how to catch the football. If they could give me statistics on drop rates back in 2002, I swear to God, he would make Dawson Knox's early seasons look like he should be an all-pro. I used to call him Stonehands. That's not an exaggeration. I just said it around my friends. There's Stonehands Reed. I saw him at the McKinley Mall one time, and I yelled it across the parking lot at him. My friends were like, yo, that's Josh Reed. And I go, hey, Stonehands, woo! And they were like, dude, he's going to hate us. Who cares? I hate him. Who was the drought-era Bills football player? All this and Drew loses the lottery. Guys, I don't think you understand this. Season ticket holders are not in a lottery. Season ticket holders get first priority for these things, which they do to try to sell us on the benefits of maintaining our tickets. Since season ticket holder benefits, they've thrown them all out the window other than you get early access to these things. So again, I'm telling you, I love you guys can crack jokes. I do like that. I do like that we are the pettiest podcast and we have the pettiest. Our listeners are jerks too. That's why I love you guys.
You know what I bet you could do? You could get training camp tickets, and then I bet if you go to call a Bills ticket agent, you go, hey, I'd like to exchange these tickets. And they go, you can't do that. I go, how about I give you back these 2 training camp tickets for Sabres tickets, and they'll gladly hand you Sabres tickets. Nobody's fucking buying tickets to the Sabres for next year.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad that they're so bad. It's a crime. It really is.
Josh Reed is the Lee Evans of Kelvin Benjamins.
Yes. See? Who annoyed me most as a player, but I wouldn't go with Brian Moorman. Not because Moorman annoys me, but the fact that he's the MVP of our team every year and he's the punter. Yes! See? Spin gets it. Spin's petty. He understands. It's like, look, it's not Mormon's fault, but also the MVP of our team shouldn't be the fucking punter. That's not what we should be doing out here. Guys, I love it. Keep them coming throughout the course of the night. I'll pick the best ones out of the chat, and we'll collect your information, and I'll hook you up because, again, there is no lottery for season ticket holders. We just go on, we go through the normal queue system, we pick our tickets because that's the only thing that they can throw us, the only bone that they can throw us, because they've jacked up our season ticket prices. They've taken away almost every single amenity in the stadium because they know they're stripping it down to nothing and bulldozing it in like what, Chris? 15 months?
Yeah, they don't give us like 2.5% off at the team store?
Oh yeah. I was gonna say we get 5% off at the team store with our card. Woo! So yeah, no, we get this. We get tickets, and I'm happy to give them away to you guys because you guys seem to enjoy them. So like I said, throughout the course of tonight's show, let me know who is the drought era player that pissed you off the most and why. We're gonna give away some training camp tickets. Now, training camp conversation. The theme of tonight's show is how big is the bubble, and when I say that, I want to kind of give this some agency. I want to kind of give you some criteria to work with when I talk about the size of the 2025 Bills roster bubble. They're going to go into training camp this year with a pretty polished final product in terms of a roster, at least by comparison to every other team in the AFC East. I mean, that's why every betting outlet under the sun has us as the favorites to be Chris, look at this. The Jets, you walk it down. Quarterback room's new and unproven. Offensive line, work in progress. All their skill positions are lacking star power, and their defense lost juice from the previous seasons, and that was supposed to be the thing that kept them afloat. The Dolphins, their quarterback is a ticking time bomb. Their backup is one of the bigger second overall pick failures in recent history. Like the fact that Zach Wilson has found his way back to the division is crazy. Offensive line, they're still thin at tackle. You'd think they've learned their lesson, but they haven't. And there's no depth anywhere on the offensive line. So even though they spent money on Jesse Davis, and they did kind of they have Aaron Brewer, and they have players now in the center, there's nothing behind them. They're one injury away from that entire fence falling down. And then at the same time, two of their most productive players, Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey, they're both on the trade block. Their skill positions aren't deep, and on the other side of the ball, their secondary is in shambles. One of their starting cornerbacks, his name is Duck. Storm Duck. Chris, I'm sorry, but I'm not afraid of a fifth-round pick named Storm Duck.
Neither am I.
For all the new viewers who just decided to pop into the show, I'll tell you what, we're raffling off, or we're giving away, Bills training camp tickets. I need to know who bugged you the most out of the drought era players and why. And then I want to look at the Patriots. The Patriots are everybody, like they're the next up and coming team, just like the Bears were when Justin Fields got drafted there. There's a sophomore quarterback in New England who everybody believes has another gear and that he can find a new level and that he's going to live up to the hype. Like, that's the problem. He now has to live up to all the hype that he got because of the 2024 season when there were no expectations. And that's a problem. We've seen it happen with quarterbacks even more talented than Drake May. I mean, look at CJ Stroud, Chris. CJ Stroud, everybody was picking Houston to go really deep in the playoffs. Some people were picking them for the AFC title game, especially when the playoffs rolled around. Except by that point, everyone looked at it and went, well, this CJ Stroud we've seen this season, everything cooled off because they were like, oh, no, this guy, I don't know what happened to the rookie CJ Stroud. This guy seems less confident. He seems less accurate. Part of it is, Chris, the offensive line, right?
Yeah.
When you as a football player get beat up behind a bad offensive line, it can do a couple things for you. It can either turn you into Josh Allen, where you become Conan the Barbarian, and you go, hey, if you won't protect me, I'll protect me. And you go out there and you grab Aaron Donald by the face mask. and you get flagged for it. Or you turn into a shell of yourself as a player. And that's what happened to CJ Stroud. The pressure and the amount of pressure his offensive line allowed affected his game. And you watched his performance recede rather than grow. And that's a problem. And Drake May, for all the money they've invested in this offensive line up in New England, they have to prove that it can work. And he has to prove that all this hype that's been heaped on him is like it's worth something. But I don't know what he's going to do because their wide receiver room is still bad, even with Stephon Diggs. And their offensive line was the worst in the NFL last year. So all the additions, like 1 year of free agency and a draft pick, isn't going to change that. It doesn't typically fix your problems. The Bills tried that. We assume that they're going to respond to Vrabel's coaching, but again, they were a bottom 5 team in the NFL last year for a reason. I don't think a single offseason fixes everything that's broken there. By comparison, you look at those teams, our coaching staff is tenured. They're grown. They know the players from coordinator, head coach, all the way on down. Our position by position, we are experienced and deep at every single spot, at least more so than the rest of the AFC East. And that's why we're betting favorites to 6, Pete. Chris, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, but a 6, Pete. Can you imagine that? 6 straight AFC East titles? Nobody's done it since New England.
I can go for it. I mean, it's a quarterback league. As long as Allen's here, we're going to be up for the division, unless he gets injured.
And it really does prove that it's a quarterback-driven league. And so in that way, I feel like we have to have this thing, right? And then I look at our roster this year heading into training camp, and we talk about the bubble. And what does the roster bubble look like this year? Does it even really exist, or are some of these positions already settled? And I'm not going to lie, like, this roster may not be overflowing with blue chip talent, household names. You know, we didn't go out and get a Jair Alexander that everybody remembers from 3 years ago when he was a Pro Bowler. No. We didn't do that. Instead, we drafted a rookie and we brought back some veterans that the team trusts, and we've built a DB room out of it. But they're deep. This might be the deepest roster the Bills have ever had. And I think that matters. You know, like I'm just taking a look here at the chat. Charles Clay pissed me off. He had the game of his life against the Bills, and then they gave him an obscene contract for that one game. John, you have no idea. There's a clip. Chris used to record me during football games. And I have a clip of me screaming, "Oh, you lean forward and get that first down, you piece of shit." I remember it like it was yesterday. And the reason I remember that is because it was Charles Clay catching just like an easy throw right into his breadbasket. And all he had to do was turn around and extend and kind of lean and get the first down. Because it's 3rd and like 11. He gets it at the 9 and puts zero effort into it and just kind of lets himself get pushed out of bounds 2 yards short of the conversion. Of course you let that guy go. He was obnoxious. Charles Clay was the softest tight end I'd ever seen. That's why when we got Dawson Knox, I was stunned because even though he couldn't catch the football, it was like, oh, wait a minute. You as a tight end are allowed to play with physicality? I didn't know that because I've spent so many years watching the Bills who haven't had one. The Bills, think about this, guys. The Buffalo Bills did not have a functional tight end room until Dawson Knox. Somebody argue with me. During the drought, look at all the no-name tight ends that rolled through town. Some of them I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But think about every nonsense tight end that ever came through. Even the fact that Scott Chandler is still talked about in Buffalo Bills lore tells you how shallow the talent pool has been at tight end for the Buffalo Bills. Lee Smith might be one of the best tight ends the Buffalo Bills have ever had, and he didn't catch the ball worth a damn. It's incredible the malfeasance that was done by this team at building out that position group. And so in that way, Charles Clay will forever be a problem. Chris, want you to write down Joe Sebastiani. He's in. I like that one.
John
Sebastiani, you win this one.
All right.
So as I keep looking down here, I swore Peerless Price would commit a penalty to get for touches his contract. You know what, Ralph Wilson Sr., there's actually a thing that there was a conspiracy that I brought up. So if you subscribe to golongtd.com, you get to do these happy hour events where he'll bring in old football players from, a lot of them Bills players, but also from around the NFL, for these happy hours where it's a private Zoom call and you just get to ask questions. During his, I was going to ask it, and somebody beat me to it. They were like, hey, what about the allegations that you took sacks on purpose to protect your passer rating so that you could get your bonuses? And he laughed out loud and was like, I didn't get paid that much for getting hit that hard. He's like, look, man, nobody who plays NFL football is out here throwing games. He goes, you're in the moment. He goes, honestly, I shouldn't have ever been an NFL quarterback. It came out during that conversation where he first said it. He had said it to Ty Dunn during their interview privately. He said, I should never have gone to the NFL because I wasn't mentally ready for the pressure of what it took to be a leader and what it took to face defenders who were that talented. And he admitted he crumbled under the pressure. And it almost humanized him. Because it's like, Chris, it's like we do. We ball bust.
Yes.
And if I break your balls about something, you're like, and then if I say, oh, Chris, you suck at this, and you look at me, you go, no, that is a problem of mine, and I have to work on it. I can't make you've stolen my thunder, but also you've humanized the problem. And now I feel bad for making fun of you. It's that kind of a thing. So in that way, like, it's funny thinking about players throwing things in order just to what? Get a bonus?
Yes.
Curry favor. So in any event, you look at what the Bills have working for them in their favor from a roster perspective. We've established talent at tentpole positions. We have bookend tackles, one of whom is a Pro Bowler. We have an MVP quarterback. We have one of the league's best wide receivers from the slot in Khalil Shakir. We have standout cornerback play in at least one place. And we have options at the other one. Okay, so we have some elite talent, a little bit. Then you want to talk about depth. And this is where the Bills roster really, like, backups at both interior offensive line and offensive tackle that you can trust against contending competitors. I go back to the Ryan Vandermark example. He played against the Chiefs, and you didn't know Spencer Brown wasn't in the game if you were a Lay fan. Ryan Vandermark, the fact that they found him as an undrafted free agent and groomed him into a starter, almost starter replacement level player, is an incredible job by our coaching staff, and it speaks to how good Aaron Cromer is at what he does. So you have that already established. Then you turn that around and you say, hey, the Bills have a wide receiver group that, despite lacking a player with the pedigree of a prime Stephon Diggs, once again has variable pieces and a lot of NFL experience at its disposal. So they can turn around and say, hey, look, we may not have the best players, but we're deep. You look at the Miami Dolphins. They've got a Tyreek Hill and they've got Jalen Waddle. Their third wide receiver is Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, who was a middling wide receiver from Tennessee. After that, most of their players do not have NFL experience. We have a whole roster full of them. That's the difference between, to quote Kendrick Lamar, they not like us. They not like us. And then a defensive line. We're going to have guys with years of NFL experience like Michael Hoyt, AJ Epenesa, Larry Ogunjobi. These guys are going to show up on the depth chart as second and third stringers. And they have 4, 5, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years in the NFL. That's incredible. Because you can, that's turnkey sort of thing, especially on the defensive line, Chris, where a lot of what you know and a lot of what you have is learned, right?
Yeah.
It's learned on the job. And then arguably the Bills have the best third down running back, or at least third running back in the AFC. Ty Johnson's amazing. When you look at what other teams have for a running back depth chart, we have a Ty Johnson who isn't just a great pass pro running back. And he's not just great at circus catches. Like, you think about the catch he made against the Broncos in the playoffs. You think about the catch he made against Detroit in the middle of the season and what was probably the NFL's game of the year. Like, and then he has the run against the Ravens to seal the game. Like, his clutch vision, running kind of off tackle. The guy just has it of a football player. He can execute. He can make you some highlight reel plays. It's why the Bills gave him a pay bump to stick around for another year or two as the third running back. Chris, most teams don't have that to rely on.
They don't.
If your starting running back goes down, you have another, like the Miami Dolphins do. They just don't use him.
Yes.
I saw Ryan
They get a lead
Denny.
and then stop running.
Scroll up in the comments for me. I saw Ryan Denny.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. Ryan Denny. How was he drafted? What made him stay on the team for so long? Why does his face look like that? Yes, Ryan Denny. I was already dealing with Chris Kelsey, and this is the thing. Chris Kelsey and Ryan Denny it's the Spider-Man meme. Chris Kelsey and Ryan Denny were the Spider-Man meme. Two men just shaking hands, going, "Hey, are you a mid-high motor white guy at defensive end? Yeah, so am I." And when I say mid, I mean you're barely rosterable. You're here. You're able to make the NFL. No slouch. But you're useless out here. I think my favorite play, the only thing I ever remember from Ryan Denny, is the trick field goal touchdown against the Seattle Seahawks. Chris, follow me here. You remember this game?
We talked about it in the comments. Yeah, I think it was opening day Seattle.
Seattle Seahawks.
He tried to leave the field and he didn't. He was just by the sideline.
Not only by the sideline, but if you watch the replay, he's making small talk with the official on the sideline just to make it look like he's like not on the field. And the official's laughing, shaking his head pre-snap like, "Kid, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of." And then it worked because he was wide open. He was wide open and just strolls into the end zone. Ryan Denny's touchdown remains, like, at that point, you as a coach, if this was Madden, you would rage quit. You'd be like, "Nope, this is not my day. I'm gonna pull the remote out right after. I'm gonna pull my controller out of the wall." Oh, Chris, that's how old I am. I just dated myself. Remember when controllers used to get plugged in?
Mm-hmm.
That's how long ago was that? Like 10 years?
Yeah.
It's been a decade.
I used to fucking wail on a Super Nintendo controller. I'd smash that thing against the wall if I lost in NHL 96.
It's hilarious to me that there was a time when Ryan Denny was the focal point of a trick play on special teams, and they decided that they had to wheel it out early in September against the Seahawks. Like, that's where we were at as a franchise. So we have that. And then also we have ascending youth is the Buffalo Bills. Defensive ends in Greg Rousseau and Javon Solomon, who still might be scratching the surface of what they can do. You know, some people have said Greg Rousseau, he's one-trick pony. He's just a run defender with a little bit of pass rush acumen. I don't know. I think some of the finer metrics point to, over the course of his career, year over year, that he is improving as a pass rusher. And if he could ever just put that together, maybe it just takes it takes their being a threat on the other side. But if Javon Solomon can give us literally anything, it's found money. And also, he didn't get many opportunities last year, Chris. But the Bills rostered him for a reason. Javon Solomon proved that he's in that conversation of guys that the Bills should have available on game day. And so in that way, those guys still have room to grow. Pass catchers like Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid are still on rookie deals. People have already made up their minds on what Kincaid is, and they don't realize he's in his third NFL season. I don't know. Doesn't receiver usually take a couple years to matriculate?
Well, tight end specifically.
So why is everyone in their feelings about, oh, Kincaid, he's a bust. He'll never be anything. I don't know. Maybe he won't, but Jesus, it's year 3. It's year 3. I freak out about small things. I am the guy who's hyperbolic and loses his mind about tiny things that don't matter. You all need to relax. Because if he grows even a little bit, the kid can put on a show in this offense, especially with all the weapons around him. And at the same time, Keon Coleman, I know we made fun of it last week. You know, people trying to talk about how, oh, his physique and all this, and he looks like, who'd they say he was? Chris, not Falcons, Jesus, Seahawks wide receiver.
Oh, DK Metcalf?
They were like, oh, he's DK Metcalfed up. Look at how jacked
Plays
Keon
for
Coleman
the
is.
Steelers now?
I don't care about jacked. Run routes. Run them, make clean cuts out of your route, Keon Coleman. But there is upside there. And then you look at exciting rookies who, outside of Max Hairston, won't get pushed into starting duties quickly anytime soon, but could still provide a ton of value, like Landon Jackson, TJ Sanders, like the guys in the defensive line specifically, could contribute early, and that's just found money. It's a roster that, even in a worst-case scenario, is still more talented, or at least talented enough. It's more talented than everybody else in the division, and it's at least enough to win the AFC's title. But having that sense of security comes with a price. Not so much for us as fans, but for the players. Yeah, those 90 guys trying to make this roster, it's an uphill climb. Because the Bills have done a really good job of fleshing out depth at almost every position. And not just depth, but seasoned depth. Guys who have been in the NFL for a while. And so when you look, I want to try to figure out, is this the smallest roster bubble ever? Let's start at the beginning. Let's go back, Chris. 2020. Let's start, when the Bills finally started to become what they are now. You look at some of the training camp battles we used to talk about, and then the ones that we are now. 2020, CB2, Levi Wallace versus the corpse of Josh Norman. That was the battle that pundits were writing articles about. At tight end, it was Lee Smith versus Jason Kroom versus Tommy Sweeney. Guys, I guarantee you none of you listening to this got out of bed this morning and said, you know whose name I'm going to hear today is Tommy Sweeney. He was a 7th-round draft pick of the Buffalo Bills at tight end. Dude caught one career touchdown pass.
I would have gone with Kroom.
Ralph Wilson Sr., Todd Collins, and Chippewa wearing some Gucci knockoff short boots with his jeans tucked in. Oh, my God. Did you see that in person? Because if you did...
They couldn't take a picture of it. Unless he had a throwaway camera, a Kodak throwaway camera.
Oh, my God. That's amazing. Spin. Why not brag about our backup quarterback? Yes. Like, you go back to 2020, guys. We were literally arguing over linebacker 3. Tyrell Dodson versus Voshon Joseph and an army of practice squad fodder. If Edmonds or Milano had gotten hurt, all you had was Tyrell Dodson and then a bunch of nobodies. Like, that's a problem. Right guard was an open hole going into training camp because you had Brian Winters, who we signed off the street. It turns out he sucked. And Ryan Bates starting over who gets to be on John, who gets to hold John Feliciano's spot, who also sucked. And then Cody Ford was our starting right tackle. So let that sink in. Cody Ford in 2020 was our starting right tackle. 2022, the biggest battles we were talking about. Cornerback, Elam versus Benford, White, and Dane Jackson. Benford stole Elam's thunder. That's how bad Elam was. And we never talked about it again. Everyone was like, oh, practices, Benford's the guy. Now look at him. He just got a $96 million extension. Benford's still the guy. Meanwhile, Kyer Elam has been traded away unceremoniously to the Dallas Cowboys. Trey White's back and Dane Jackson. Chris, how funny is it that it's the same cornerback room, except it's Maxwell Harrison instead of Kyer Elam?
Yeah, makes sense.
It's the same cornerback room. At wide receiver, here's the funny part. Our depth chart at wide receiver, if you talked about slot, it was Jamison Crowder, Isaiah McKenzie, Khalil Shakir and Tavon Austin all trying to be options, and Khalil Shakir was a rookie. You had Jake Kumaro and Isaiah Hodgins still floating around the roster. That tells you just how bad things were. That Jake Kumaro was still here on this roster. Now, fast forward to 2025. Guys, look where we're living now. It's literally the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. We got into a cab, we drove across the country, and we ended up in a place where the Buffalo Bills go into the offseason with very few question marks. And where the bubbles do exist, I mean, maybe the most impactful one, Chris. Let's start with CB2. Why don't you talk about the message you just got from Ryan Rhodes?
Yeah, we put a clip on Instagram. If you want to follow us on Instagram at The Rockpile Report, I clipped out Drew talking about no competition for CB2. It looks like it's going to be Hairston. And Ryan Rhodes, who loves his Seagrams, said he'll drink his Seagrams because he believes that there's going to be like a mid-year signing at quarterback, or maybe mid-camp signing at cornerback.
It's cornerback 2 is an interesting one because all signs point to this team trying to groom Maxwell Hairston into being ready for game day. Training camp's going to be interesting to watch his acclimation. Specifically how he reacts to bigger, more physical wide receivers at this level. Because it's one of the things you don't get in, even if it's D1, when you're coming out of Kentucky, you're playing against the SEC. The SEC has big physical players, and that translates to the wide receiver position.
It's the minor leagues, the NFL.
Well, think about all the receivers to come out of the SEC. Julio Jones.
Josh Reed.
Josh Reed. Yes, Josh Reed. See, Chris, every time I start to get steam, you're like, nah, shut up. So what I'll say is how he deals with size and physicality and that part of his learning curve. I go back to we talked about this last week. There was a game, the Bills, Trey White was a rookie. He was starting and he looked really good. The Bills were winning football games. And then we go out and we play the Cincinnati Bengals and he gets lined up against AJ Green. And even though Trey White would go on to be an all-pro cornerback, he gets absolutely victimized throughout that game by AJ Green. There's a play where Trey White's in the perfect spot. He not face guarding, but he went down, he read the wide receiver's body language, he turned around and he was going to knock the ball down or try to intercept it. He put his hands up, the ball's coming down, and AJ Green just reaches over the top of him like he's a child and grabs the ball right in front of his face mask, catches it, puts it in one hand like a loaf of bread, shoves Trey White in the back of the helmet, and runs away for like 18 yards before someone can catch up with him and tackle him. And you saw Trey White get off the ground and just look around like, guys, what the hell just happened? Max Hairston, if he starts this year, will have those moments because he's not the biggest or most physical wide cornerback, and he will struggle with that level of physicality against wide receivers. His speed and his technique is what they have to hone over the next couple months. And in that way, while Rhodes is betting that they will add somebody with a little more sandpaper, I'm not going to lie. Chris, can you Google this? Is Rasul Douglas still out there? Has anyone signed Rasul Douglas? Because I will say that I have a hard time imagining that the Bills, if they watch him struggle during training camp, wouldn't hedge their bets, knowing that Trey White had a rough spring.
According to Wikipedia, he's still free.
So if Rasul Douglas is still out there, and you know him, he knows you, he knows your system, you know he's a willing tackler, he plays the run well, so obviously you like him. Maybe his coverage chops aren't exactly what you'd like, and maybe he was asking for a higher price tag and thought he could get it the way Jordan Poyer thought he could when we let Jordan Poyer walk and then re-signed him for just over $1 million. Maybe this is one of those things where they say, hey, if Max Hairston starts to struggle in training camp when the pads go on, I don't know, we still try to give him the job, but we hedge our bets and we say, hey, if Trey White can't bang anymore, or if he's a better dime DB, just like the Ravens used him when he was useful, then maybe instead of a Dane Jackson who doesn't play the run well, maybe we need to jettison that guy and go find ourselves maybe we got to go get we got to find Rasul Douglas, call his number. Or like an anchor man, you blow the conch shell and he just shows up. Hey guys, I heard you needed me. Cornerback 2 is going to be interesting. It's not a battle. It's just a point of interest. And that says a lot. They drafted the kid highly. They're going to give him the inside track to it. But if he struggles, they may have to try to just investigate what else exists out there. Quarterback 2 remains one of the funny ones because every pundit is latched onto this now. And it talked about how, oh man, this QB2 battle is wide open for the first time in forever. Well, yeah, because it's usually dictated by the quarterback and what he needs in his corner. And that's why this is so interesting, because I look at this from a couple different angles. Mitch Trubisky being cut makes a lot of sense. It saves the team just about $1.75 million. That money you then take into the regular season for when you have to elevate guys from the practice squad, which is a thing that the Bills are constantly doing. At the same time, think about, Chris, the guys who have been the backup quarterback for Josh Allen. Matt Barkley, Mitch Trubisky, Kyle Allen. It's basically been a parade of Josh's friends. It has nothing to do with whether or not they can play the game of football. And that's almost an acknowledgement by the franchise that if we lose Josh, we're not winning a lot of football games, so it doesn't matter. Chris, you watch like Gardner Minshew going to the Chiefs. Gardner Minshew is a quarterback that we've watched go win football games in the NFL.
And have awesome hair.
Gardner Minshew playing for the Raiders beat the Ravens. I think it was just last year, wasn't it?
Maybe. Or did he beat the Chiefs?
No, he beat the Ravens, I believe.
I don't know. Somebody fact check us on that.
James Payne, Rasul is burnt as a 20-minute wings. He's crispy. I'd rather force the rookies to learn through their rough spots while playing instead of going to a vet. That's a salient point, Spin. I do agree with some of that. I think that I would rather have them hedge. Like, here's where I would break down that CB2, CB3, CB4 conversation for camp. Regardless of how it plays out, before camp even starts, I will tell you that the second that Dane Jackson looks like a liability, which he probably will, bring Rasul Douglas back and let him have Dane's place. I don't know why that move didn't get made in the first place, other than cost. I think Rasul thought his market would be better. And now him and his agent are holding out that someone will get an injury and go fishing for a physical cornerback. I think the problem with Dane Jackson is he can play zone coverage well. He can't tackle and he's not physical. This defense that Bobby Babich is kind of trying to evoke from this team, and the way that they're building the roster, it's almost like you have to have a little bit of jam. You got to have some jam, right? Like we're not talking about it being, this isn't hockey. I'm not saying, oh, I need a guy who has sandpaper. No. I don't need a Tom Wilson. What I need is a guy who's willing to go out there and play the run willingly, who's a downhill tackler, who's instinctive about it. Dane Jackson's none of those things. And I think he's a much worse dime back than Trey White at this point in his career. I would rather trust a shuffle at that position than anything else. So while Rasul might be cooked, I don't want to challenge Maxwell Hairston. What I want to do is I want to challenge all of these vets who are stacked up on our defensive back roster behind him and say, look, go out there and play the run. If you don't, I'll call Rasul. I will go call Rasul if you don't go tackle that running back. Back to quarterback 2. Quarterback 2 is interesting just in the sense that this has always been a parade of Josh Allen's friends, but isn't that the job of QB2?
Yes.
To help the quarterback in whatever he needs on a day-to-day basis and be the break glass in case of emergency option. Some teams choose to just stack talent next to talent and trust that that's going to work. But it doesn't always, because that's what the Ravens thought they were doing when they had Joe Flacco, and then they were like, well, it's okay because we're going to draft this rookie quarterback. Well, Joe Flacco's still here, and it's going to be fine. It's what every Green Bay team has thought for the last 20 years, where they're like, well, we have a Brett Favre, but we're going to draft
Aaron Rodgers,
and it's going to be fine. They'll mentor each other. No, they're alphas, and they have egos, and they're going to be like sandpaper on each other until somebody cracks. And then Jordan Love's going to come along, and Aaron Rodgers is going to have the same problem that you drafted a quarterback early. But look at Jordan Love. Would you not argue Jordan Love is a very good quarterback in the NFL?
Yeah, it's kind of maddening that it looks like Green Bay has hit on 3 quarterbacks in a row.
And the Bills couldn't do it for 20 years?
Yeah.
Although they didn't try. They didn't spend many first-round picks on quarterbacks.
Todd Collins?
Not a first-round pick.
He wasn't?
I don't think so.
Second? I know he was high up. Somebody fact-check me.
I'm pretty sure that the only first-round pick who started a quarterback for the Bills during the drought was... Actually, I shouldn't say that because Drew Bledsoe did start for the Bills, and also J.P. Lossman. That was it. All of the other assholes who blew through town were just also rans. And just, hey, that guy looks good on your second team. He's better than our guy, which is more of an indictment of you as a franchise than you want to admit.
I remember people, when I was in Atlanta, living in Atlanta, people would tell me at the Bills bar, they would be like, because Bills backers of Atlanta is like a bunch of people my age. So at that time, they're fresh out of college. So they were in college like 05, 06, 07 and, doing the, going to school at UB or Buff State. And they would see J.P. Lossman out on Chippewa. Nobody would talk to him. He would be there by himself. And you just, I'm going to go out because I'm J.P. Lossman. I'm in a small market. People are going to recognize me and come talk to me. Nope, just him. Like I can just picture.
You stink, bro.
I can just picture him alone in the corner at the Bayou on Chippewa.
The Bayou. Oh my God, I remember that. What I love, Christopher in the comments. My hot take: I want someone like Kirk Cousins as a backup. Would be very comforting. I don't think it's possible because of his contract. Here's the problem. Again, QB2. I think we as fans misunderstand what that job is. Their job is to help get QB1 ready. And that's why Matt Barkley was our backup quarterback for so long. And yet every time he was pressed into action, they would run the football. They wouldn't trust him to throw. And that's by design. It's because they said, listen, Matt Barkley's not a good quarterback. We don't want him doing this unless we absolutely have to. And then you start to realize, okay, the Bills don't prioritize this. They almost kind of know what we as fans know. If you do not have Josh Allen, then this team is probably losing a lot of football games. And so in that way, what's the point of spending a ton at QB2? And that's where I look at this as maybe a battle. Maybe a battle. Because there's a monetary savings to cutting Mitch Trubisky and having Mike White as a dude who can just sling it. And everyone who goes, oh, well, he's not as mobile, and so they can't run the same style of offense. No one is running the Josh Allen offense if Josh Allen's not there. So then instead, you'd rather run a very accurate, strong-armed passer instead of Mitch Trubisky, who, for all of his billing, is a strong-armed thrower. He hasn't looked the part during training camp. He hasn't looked the part during any of the last 2 seasons. That's a problem. And I think the Bills would very much like to be shrewd about this. So if Mike White can truly outplay him, I do think Mitch Trubisky might be sent packing. And I almost wonder if now that he's an MVP, maybe some of the chip comes off Josh's shoulder and maybe he doesn't need that QB2 like voice in his ear. I don't know. What I do know is AJ Epenesa is another interesting one, right? Like you talk about potential roster battles. I don't know that this is again, we talked about the bubble. They have no need to cut AJ Epenesa. They can keep the roster status quo because think about it. Jochen Hesch or Michael Hesch, whatever his name's going to be.
Michael Hoyt.
Hoyt, Hesch, doesn't matter. They spell him the same way. He's they're going to start the season on the suspension list. So they can keep one extra D tackle and they need to be able to keep one extra D end. So I'm sure that they'll do the Reed Ferguson special with somebody where they send you to the parking lot, go wait for a few hours while we cut you, get a bunch of guys in the final roster, then put them on reserve suspended list, and then we re-sign you either that day, the next day, whatever the case may be. Reed Ferguson was a good soldier in that way, and that's why they signed. I think that's why he has the contract extension he has. They're like, listen, you've always played ball. We still like the way you snap it. Fuck it. We ball. We're going to give you a 4-year deal.
Yeah, it's like he gets cut and then he gets re-signed to a slightly higher value, but that slightly higher value is like put in as a bonus.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, you just got $500,000 to not come to work for one fucking day.
So what are you showing me here?
It's AJ's Spotrek.
So this is what's fun. It's not so much about what AJ does or does not do during this training camp. It's more about what does the roster do around him. Can this roster outgrow AJ Epenesa? If you think about last year, he played the most snaps of his entire career. He had the most involvement. And it was the first time in his career he finished with a single-digit quarterback pressure rate. Not rate, excuse me, number. So the problem is when you play AJ Epenesa on early downs, you almost played him at like 30% increase from the previous season in terms of snap count. But it's mostly on running downs because you were trying to keep Von Miller fresh. You're going to have to do the same thing with Joey Bosa. You're going to have to keep Joey Bosa fresh. And so when you're trusting AJ Epenesa to be that guy, you take a look at what happened to his statistics in that process. It's the first time in his career that he finished with single-digit pressures. He had 6 sacks, which keeps pace with his 7 sack per year average over the last couple of years, which isn't earth-shattering, but it's not nothing. He's a contributor. He was a good but not amazing run defender. He did make some really standout plays down the stretch of the season, and then in the playoffs, like that Ravens game, he made some really, really key plays. Like near the goal line where he's just sniffing out runners and not biting on blockers out in space and kind of knifing in behind the line to get guys or at least slow them down. AJ's got some positivity to his game. There's things that I like about the way that he plays the game of football. He's also being paid a lot of money. And not having him on the roster could shave almost $3 million worth of salary cap space. So it's not so much that the Bills need to move on, but what I see is an opportunity. If a guy like Javon Solomon comes out into camp and has a hell of a camp, once the pad goes on and he shows he has real pass rush acumen, something that we've talked about with the defensive tackles where everyone wanted a one-tech. Everyone wanted Alfred Collins in the draft. You know, they've wanted us to go out in free agency and sign or try to trade for guys like Dexter Lawrence because they felt like that's what our small linebackers need. And honestly, they do. I'm not going to try to say that I know more than the Bills coaching staff, but honestly, our small pursuit style linebackers need protection by bigger, more physical defensive linemen who can eat up blockers and not let them get to the second level. In that world, I guarantee you they're looking at a guy like Javon Solomon going, look, he's a Jerry Hughes type. He's a smaller defensive end. But if he starts to produce in a pass rush perspective and he still plays the run well, they might hedge their bets and say, look, we could trade him away for a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick, save a couple million this year, get a draft pick, and oh, by the way, we've got a guy who does the same job somewhere else on the roster, whether it's a Landon Collins, whether it's a Javon Solomon. Like, there's now an avenue for a whole bunch of players to make the roster at AJ Epenesa's expense. Young players are going to be challenged to try to make this roster, and the team almost wants them to do it. Now, AJ Epenesa's savvy might lead to some of those. Like, again, 7 sacks. You don't luck into 7 sacks in the NFL. But that's why he has trade value. And so it may come down closer to cutdown day, and the Bills might get to float him and maybe get a pick from another team who suffered an injury or might have needs, or maybe some rookie that they drafted to be a starter didn't pan out the same way we're talking about with Maxwell Hairston. I just look at AJ Epenesa as the most vulnerable person on our defensive line. But again, Chris, would he be a huge loss?
To you, no.
To anybody.
To especially you, because you wanted J.K. Dobbins.
I think again, this is why I don't do draft takes. Because my draft takes are always terrible. I also look at the linebacker competition. The Bills have built themselves a linebacker stable. You know, just a few minutes ago, I was making fun of the fact that back in 2022, our linebacker, if we lost Milano or Edmonds, was going to be Tyrell Dodson, who hasn't held a starting job in the NFL anywhere else since he left Buffalo. That's a problem. Now we have Dorian Williams. Dorian Williams is the next man up, especially with how heavy we go nickel and the fact that we don't employ a traditional Sam linebacker. I look at this battle and I say to myself, not even battle, I look at that locker room and I say, okay, look at the linebacker position. They're all the same size. They like these small, fast, athletic guys, and they feel like some of them have special teams acumen and some of them just give you enough upside as a starter that you can maybe slot him in if somebody gets hurt. Well, that's Dorian Williams. Dorian Williams is your backup. Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano are your starters. Baylon Spector. Baylon Spector has spent way too much time in a Bills uniform, in my opinion. I think that he's a guy who gives you very little when he's called upon in actual game action.
Just like your real dad. Just...
It's all fantasy. It's all good when it's a fantasy, but when you actually put it into like practice.
Yeah. Your ceiling is right here, and you can't get to it. Just guys, like your dad.
Do you want a funny story? You guys want to hear a funny story? We're an hour and 60 minutes into this podcast. You want to hear a funny story about my biological father? He reached out to me on Facebook out of nowhere and was just like, hey, you know, and I was like, oh, no, I know, because I've spent years telling your family members, if my dad wants to meet me, it's going to be like the song A Boy Named Sue. And you owe me a pound of flesh. And once it's done, you and me can have a conversation like men, but you owe me. And he knows why. And so we had this conversation, and he approached me on Facebook Messenger randomly out of nowhere. And he goes, hey, I'm going to be in Buffalo more often. I'd like to get to know you. Can you write me? He goes, but I'm a better learner through words. I'm a better visual learner. Can you write me a story about what your life's been like so I can read it and catch up on the basically, can you write me your life story so I can catch up on the cliff notes? That way when I meet you, we can kind of fast track things. Chris, how do you think I responded to that?
I would have no idea. Like,
how do you respond when someone goes, hey, I know I abandoned you, but can you just summarize your whole like adult life for me so I can get the cliff notes, and then when I meet you for a beer, it's not as weird? Oh, you don't think this is going to be a problem? Chris, what would you do if you were in my shoes in that situation?
If you were like, if you came to me and said, look, I know you busted my balls a lot about my real dad, but I'm gonna meet him. We made plans. He reached out to me on Facebook. I'm gonna meet him, and my response would be, when and where I'm bringing cameras and mics.
It was one of the most bizarre situations of my entire life. It's stunning, the audacity of people. And that's where I've learned, but then you guys wonder why I am the way that I am. It's because we're born with I guess it's maybe some of it's genetic, just rare audacity.
Christopher in the chat wants your dad's address.
Rare audacity. Just the things that I'm willing to do, the things that I'm willing to say. It's psychotic. And so the linebacker competition now, I look at it and I look at Baylon Spector and I say, look, we can't get anything out of this group. Everything that's behind our starters, we used to have nothing. Now look at Dorian Williams. He fills in for Matt Milano and he does it with aplomb. And now we have Joe Andreessen and we have Baylon Spector. And
Eddie Ufocio.
Yeah, but Baylon Spector has been injured every single year, and yet the team keeps putting him on the roster, and then he lets them down every time they give him an opportunity. That's the thing that frustrates me. He's a charlatan. He shows up as if he's worth his roster spot.
Like Ross Tucker.
Until you put him into the spot and say, hey, guess what? Against the Ravens, we need you to step in because somebody got hurt. And he gets run over. He's a fraud. Now you've got a guy, Joe Andreessen, making a fraction of what Baylon Spector is. And at the same time, he's younger. He's got less of an injury history. I don't know. You're not tied to either of these guys long term. I really think
Andreessen's got injuries, emotional injuries from long neckers.
I think that this might be Baylon Spector's last stand. But again, if he's not on the roster and it is Joe Andreessen, does the roster really suffer? Chris, do you even notice if we churn fourth linebacker?
I wouldn't even know Baylon Spector's gone if he gets cut.
Returner is the only other place I can find a real competition on this roster. And it's funny because I wonder if that's not their idea for Laviska Shenault. Now, my meltdown over Laviska Shenault being on this roster caused a meltdown on this podcast. I wonder if that's not the team's idea. Because we all know, you watch those punt returns, Chris, in the playoffs when Khalil Shakir had to do it. And he's just so decisive in space with the ball in his hands. He makes cuts. He makes moves. They don't want to put him into that position, though, because they need him doing that on offense. And so in that way, they got to find somebody who can be their kick and punt returner. Now, Brandon Codrington is a guy that they traded away, a 7th-round pick for last year, and he was great. He was epic. And then he got hurt right before the playoffs and didn't get to play. I thought it was a crime because he even told the media that he thought he was ready to go for the Broncos game, and they didn't let him play. But then he also didn't play in the divisional round against the Ravens, and then he didn't play against the Chiefs the following week. I think that Brandon Codrington was more hurt than he wanted to let on. But again, if you're a football player, you have that bravado. You know, it's that Shoresy mentality. You go until you can't go anymore. That's it. That's the game. So with that in mind, Brandon Codrington, I'm hoping that's an option for the team. I'm hoping it's a thing that they can capitalize on because I hate the idea of Laviska Shenault sneaking onto this roster as a kick and punt returner. I don't think he holds a candle to Codrington.
No.
I saw what that guy did last year. I don't think this is a battle. I hope it's not. And I hope this isn't the way that they sneak that guy into the roster. Because I'll be pissed if I have to talk about how Laviska Shenault is suited up and out there catching accidental touchdown passes from Josh Allen.
Yeah, we can't have that for
your so mad. For my own ego, it'll make this so bad. Guys, this might be the smallest roster bubble the team has ever had. There might not be that many significant cuts. And when we do cut players, everyone goes, usually you go, oh, hey, let's scan the wire. Where can we improve our team? Where can you improve this roster in terms of depth? There's no starters who you're going to find out there on cut down day. So where can you make a better roster than what the Bills have already assembled in terms of depth at any meaningful position? Chris, defensive line, you're going to find better depth on cut down day? No.
No.
Offensive line. Is there any way the Buffalo Bills are going to get better on cut down day on the offensive line? Absolutely not. That's drafted. It's cultivated. It's coached. That thing is a machine. The wide receiver core. You already got the guy, Elijah Moore. That's the guy that you would normally wait around for some team to cut a veteran who just wasn't going to make it, but who showed a little bit of promise as an outside and inside receiver the previous year. You already have him, and he costs you almost nothing. It's safety. Maybe safety if DeMar Hamlin continues to be injured throughout the preseason. I don't know. What do we got here? Codrington only returns punts and kicks. Isn't that enough to make the roster? Yeah, I think that is enough to make the roster if you do it well. And Codrington was explosive when he was allowed to do it. Seagram's and if Shenault makes the roster. Joe Fryer, I will take that. Chris, put it on the board. Joe Fryer, Drew Gear, Shenault will not make the roster. I don't think we roster him. When will we witness Drew's karma manifest in real time? Get on the train, boys. Who else wants to go on the Seagram's board? Everybody line up. You can all get some. Now, Chris, scroll up back through the comments because we got to find one more person. One more person with a response that I really like here.
I mean, there's some good responses to your. I've seen Robert Royal, Chuck Clay.
Why don't you pick one? You pick the third one.
God, drought era Bill.
Who just bothered the shit out of you. Because what I'll say is, while he thinks about it, I'm going to close this conversation out with this. This team is the hardest one to make in the NFL. The Chiefs don't even have our problem because we have so much depth already that's experienced. There's no rookies who are pushing for depth positions at kick returner. We have a punter. We have a punter competition going on if anyone gives a shit. And if you do, you're an idiot. But, Chris, that kid who gave me sass about the punter competition has soured me towards everything because I'm petty. So now I hate both those punters. I hope they cut both of them and sign a street free agent. There's no competition there in my mind. Kicker, they've already proven to you they didn't go out and make a move. They didn't get one. They didn't get a bigger, better kicker. They trust Bass. They're going to roll with this kid. They trust that his head's on straight. And so in that way, everything lines up for the Buffalo Bills having the smallest roster bubble that they've had in the last 5-6 years. And I feel like that's the thing you need. Like if there was ever anything you need to give you momentum into a season towards like one where you think you can really go win a Super Bowl, it's you look at your roster and go, how many of these guys are really fighting for positions, or have I figured this out from a roster perspective? If you have that, you have the world by the balls.
Kyle Washington also in for Laviska Shenault being on the 53.
All right.
You want a Bills player that really irked me during the drought, and nobody's brought it up at all tonight.
Sure.
And there's a story behind this.
Oh, no.
I went on some, it's like an off and on thing for maybe 6 or 7 months with this girl that I met in Atlanta. And I think it might have been the first time around. I was like, it's football season. I'm going down to, I forget the name of the Bills bar. It was the like White Horse Tavern or something like that. I was like, I'm going down to Whitehall Tavern. I'm going to watch the Bills game tonight. And she was like, I was like, well, it's like in that like date 5-6 range where you're like, oh, do I start bringing them out to things that I'm involved with? And I was like, yeah, I guess you can come. I mean, I don't recommend it for your own mental health. It's the first game of the year. So like I'm really going to be on edge. And she was like, all right, well, I'm going to come. I'll meet you at Whitehall. And she met me at Whitehall on a Monday Night Football for Patriots and Bills. And Leotis McKelvin got stripped of a ball on a kickoff, and the Patriots ended up winning the game. I left the bar without telling her. She was there with me, and I paid my tab, and I left. And I got a phone call from her, and, like, where are you? Oh, I left. I can't. We were about to win that game, and Leotis McKelvin fucked me over, and it was like her first view into
like this is what it is to be a fan.
Yes.
So, as I open another Moosehead, here's what I'll say. I've been reading through the comments here for a second. First of all, if I can assess a couple things. First of all, Chris was not going down to the Pink Pony Club. Chris is afraid of strippers.
I've been to the Pink. Had a woman dressed as a nurse asked me if I wanted to dance, and I told her I didn't have health insurance.
Ralph Wilson Sr., Spector looks like Tarzan, rehabs like Jane. That's exactly the reference. That is exactly it. And then you just look at the things like I'm reading through here when Chenault makes the roster, blah, blah, blah. It's only diabetes. Chris, scroll up for me for a second. Because I want to see some, because somebody mentioned, B-Ski mentioned safety. I want to talk about why I don't give a damn about safety. Safety is actually a non-story. Safety does not matter. They drafted, okay?
Yeah, Cole Bishop.
No. You don't understand. They drafted a safety. They've been drafting safeties throughout the Brandon Beane era in the 5th round, 7th round. They've been throwaway, just kind of dart throw if they kind of how they've treated the defensive back room right up until they drafted Max Hairston in the 1st round, kind of how they've handled cornerbacks and defensive backs in general. Just late round dart throws, and if they develop, we think we can coach them. I mean, hell, they took Levi Wallace from an undrafted free agent, made him not only a starter on our team for playoff teams, but then also he parlayed that into a $4 million a year contract with the Steelers before he failed. Dane Jackson parlayed his time here with the Buffalo Bills into another contract with another team. The Bills are very good at cultivating poor defensive back play. And so, of course, they believe that if they draft these DBs highly, they can cultivate them. So, of course, Cole Bishop is going to get first crack. And that's why I don't believe there's any battle at safety. I think Damar Hamlin stays on the roster. I think that Cole Bishop is your CB2. He's probably your free safety. Taylor Rapp's going to remain your strong safety. And then after that, it's maybe Derek Forrest trying to beat out some guy named what, Chris? What's his name? Wande Owens. Wande.
That's a real name.
When they gonna play football? It's not this year in 2025 for the Buffalo Bills. The safety room is set, and Derek Forrest is probably like a practice squad player. He'll probably stick around because his upside is big, but everybody else, like Jordan Hancock's a rookie, they're not going to get rid of him. Their four-person safety room is going to be Cole Bishop, Taylor Rapp, Damar Hamlin, and Jordan Hancock. And then they're going to put Derek Forrest, because he was a high-level contributor for Washington, on the practice squad. And that's going to be your team. There is no competition at safety. I don't know why anyone would even think of that. Now, Beasky, I'm not making fun of you. What I'm saying is you got to look at the room. You got to look at the talent that they have on hand, and you got to look at the coaching staff you're talking about. I love this. I love that we are entering the era of Bills football where I'm arguing with somebody in the comments, not even arguing, but I'm making points about the minutia of the roster. That's how good this team is. That's why I say, we're Super Bowl, what are we? We're not favorites, but we're close.
Yeah.
We're teams that are favored by Vegas to go compete for a Super Bowl trophy.
Us, Kansas City, and Baltimore should be the favorites for the AFC.
Now, what I'll tell you is the Bills may have the most complete roster they've had in decades. Going into training camp, there is no bubble this year. There's only a handful of jobs to earn, and they're not starting positions. The starting positions are already figured out. This may be the smallest bubble in Buffalo Bills history. At least going back to the 90s when we were going to Super Bowls. That makes me feel good. That's going to help me sleep at night. That and this moose head. Guys?
Yeah, that's the 6th one you've had.
James Payne, safety's the same value as running back 4. Just there to prevent home run touchdowns. There you go. I love the idea that we have a roster that's more fleshed out than any we've put on the field before. And it's not just fleshed out with starting talent. There are also a ton of rookies who we've thrown into key positions that if they give us anything, it's house money. And if only our starters produce, if it's only Ed Oliver, DeQuan Jones, Larry Ogunjobi, if it's only the guys who we know by name who produce anything, we're still winners. We're still heads above everybody else in our division, and we're still pushing the conference. And if those rookies decide to contribute, if they acclimate, if they buy in, Chris, everybody has a real problem on their hands.
Yes.
If this thing turns around, everybody has a real problem on their hands. I'm excited that after this many years of doing podcasts, through the ups, again, this is a decade of us podcasting. This is our 10-year anniversary. And if after a decade, I get to talk about this football team instead of the Rex Ryan Buffalo Bills, Chris, it's like this whole thing is coming full circle finally. We're seeing the most complete version of the Buffalo Bills we've ever seen. I love it. And I love all of you guys who have come along for the ride with us. I really do.
10 years. It's wonderful.
I love this. So Camarda is not competing for a starting role. Absolutely not. Again, I hope Camarda gets cut. I hope they bring in some guy who's been on his couch for 6 months and but he's a European soccer player and he can boot the hell out of the ball. And he has 3 years of NFL experience. And after Camarda and Robbins or whatever the hell his name is show up and they kick the hell out of the ball and Joe Buscaglia goes out there and hand times punts, they bring in some guy, some Euro trash who shows up and they go, hey, kick the ball 6 seconds in the air. And he goes, yeah, and just boots it. And they both lose their jobs immediately. I hope that's what happens. I think as long as you hold kicks well, it doesn't matter how you punt. So, Chris, if anything, that's the thing that'll be interesting from a special teams perspective.
Yep.
Guys, it's fun. I love you guys for showing up, but we've been doing this for over an hour and a half. I love that we have 30-something people watching this right now after we've been doing it for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
They're still here. It peaked and it's dropped, but guess what? There's still some of you psychopaths who are here with us. I love each and every one of you. I hope I get to see you this year at the Ralph, the last year at the stadium. Guys, if you're coming out to a tailgate, make sure you tell us. Make sure you come break bread, have a drink. If not, know that we love you. Know that we love you for every week that you show up here, you give us your snark, you make fun of us, you help us make fun of ourselves and each other and ideas and things, because we are the Pettiest Bills podcast. We're the pettiest, hardest drinking. I think we defend that title well, right, Chris?
Yes. We don't have any challengers.
No. And with that said, we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. And this has been the Rock Pile Report. I love each and every one of you guys.